Thank you, Chairwoman Lee and Chairman Stile, for convening this hearing on the NVRA, also known as the Motor Vehicle Act. As a member of Congress from a state that has a long history of election fraud and irregularities, that would be Illinois, I am deeply concerned about the integrity of our elections, both in my state and nationally. As we discussed in a previous hearing, states like Illinois systematically refuse to establish standards to maintain clean voter rolls and prevent non-citizens from voting. As states give driver's licenses and CDLs to non-citizens and illegal aliens at record rates, I believe that NVRA's safeguards against these non-citizens being registered to vote are inadequate and need significant reforms. Congress must act to update the NVRA to account for states that refuse to follow the law, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak with our witnesses about this critical issue. So first, Professor Morley, this past July, our full committee held a hearing on how the NVRA can restrict best practices for clean voter rolls. In today's hearing, we want to look at which parts of the NVRA should be amended to bring greater confidence to our elections. In the case of Ian Roberts, or the case of Ian Roberts, makes this all the more pressing. In your opinion, what should be our highest priority in fixing motor voter?
Thank you very much, Congresswoman. Specifically with regard to list maintenance, as I had mentioned before, one of the main reforms that the committee could consider making to the NVRA would be expanding the list of criteria that election officials are required to use when conducting the federally mandated list maintenance. As of right now, they are only required to identify voters who have died or, I believe, who have moved. There are a variety of circumstances under which a person could be ineligible to vote, particularly they've registered somewhere else, they're not a citizen, so shouldn't have been put on the list to begin with, and so the NVRA could be amended in order to require election officials to during this already mandated list maintenance to identify voters who are ineligible for any reason, rather than just two particular reasons as the statute is currently drafted. One other thing is to improve the quality of information. This committee could consider expanding the databases to which election officials are required to interact. And this was something more on the HAVA end than the NVRA end. But currently, HAVA requires election officials to enter into agreements with their state motor vehicle agency in order to exchange data. They also require agreements with the Social Security Administration to exchange data. There's at least one major source of information, the federal SAVE database, which has citizenship information. The state of Florida was actually recently in litigation with the federal government to try to expand access to that. This committee could look at the possibility of either requiring states to enter into agreements to receive information from the SAVE database, or potentially even other databases to the extent that there are other agencies that have information concerning citizenship that could be shared with states. Alternatively, cross-checking against such databases could be part of the mandatory list maintenance process that states are required to engage in on an ongoing basis. When election officials are updating their databases, they're not looking to throw eligible voters off the rolls. And so, to the extent this committee can make better quality information available to them, to the extent this committee could require the government to share citizenship-related data with them, that will both help officials remove ineligible voters while protecting vulnerable voters, while protecting people from erroneously being flagged as potentially ineligible.
Thank you. Those were very helpful suggestions. Mr. Braden, when first considered, motor voter was written to remove barriers and facilitate voter registration. This unfortunately led some states to remove verification requirements for the answers that applicants provided. Just this year, the Maryland State Board of Elections found that an illegal immigrant named Ian Roberts successfully registered to vote and requested absentee ballots in 3 different elections, with verification requirements such as documentary proof of citizenship have prevented Ian Roberts from illegally voting?
And the answer to that is probably yes. Depends on the details, but we have a variety of technologies available to us that we're not using which this committee could statutorily encourage or require.
Thank you very much, and I yield back.